Welcome to Manifested Publishers. My names are Mr. Mariga and I'll be teaching Advanced Management Accounting. And today I want us to talk about decision making. I want us to talk about what? Decision making. Where decision making simply involves choosing an alternative or making a decision from among possible alternatives. So choosing one alternative from among possible what? Alternatives. We have two broad ways of making decisions. Number one, we can do that by preparing or constructing payoff tables. Number two, we can do that by preparing a decision tree. Two ways. Number one, payoff tables. Number two, decision tree. But for us to be able to make decisions, there are certain terms we must be able to do what? To understand. There are terms we must be able to understand for us to make decisions when we are a decision what? Maker. The first term is the alternative. What is an alternative? An alternative decision simply means the available options. The available what? Options that a decision maker has. So these are the available options available to a who? To a decision maker. To a decision maker. Such that these alternatives are normally controllable, or they can be controlled by the decision maker. They can be controlled by the decision what? Maker. A good example of a decision that a decision maker can take or can influence or control is the supply of a product. Of a product to a what? To a market. To a market. A company that produces goods can be able to decide on the quantity they want to supply to the what? Market. The second term that we want to do what? That we must understand is a state of nature. State of nature. State of nature here basically represents the uncontrolled variable. The uncontrolled variable. The uncontrolled variable here cannot be controlled by the decision maker. A good example of an uncontrolled variable is the demand of a market. Demand of a market. The goods to be demanded by the market cannot be controlled by the management of a company. Number three is your what? Payoffs. The payoffs there, we define them as gains that you expect from your decision. These are the gains or losses that you expect from your decision. So they either may be positive or negative. Expected from decision. The payoffs here may be something like contribution. The contribution you expect to gain. The sales revenue. The costs, profits, etc. So those are some of the terms that we must understand for us to be able to do what? To make decisions. Right. Now we've said when you're making decisions, there are two ways you can do that. You can do that by preparing a payoff table. You can also do that by preparing a decision tree. A decision what? Tree. So there are two basic methods that a decision maker will use for decision making. You prepare a payoff table, and number 2 is a decision what? Tree. A decision tree. Right. Now, with a payoff table here, with a payoff table, so number 1, let me explain a payoff table. A payoff table is a summary or that shows the decision, the state of nature, and the payoffs that will result from the decision the management has made. A payoff table will normally show you the states of nature, and we've said this is who cannot be controlled by the decision maker. So this is an uncontrollable event. You'll have the states of nature. Then you'll have your alternative decision, or simply your who? Decision. Alternative decision. And remember, we've said the decision can be controlled by the actions of the who? Decision maker. Can say the first state of nature S1, S2, and S3. Decision 1, decision 2, decision 3. Then here you're going to have your who? Possible payoffs. Possible who? Payoffs. Possible payoffs there. That is how a what? A payoff table looks like. This is how a payoff table looks like. Remember, it must have your what? Alternative decision, which can be controlled by the management's decision. States of nature, which the management cannot control, and all the possible payoffs will also be indicated inside the payoff table. Inside the payoff what? Table. Allow me to not talk about a decision tree. I will introduce it when we reach there. Let's first talk about what? The payoff table. And now that I have shown you this, I want us to talk about the various decision-making what? Environments. The various decision-making what? Environments. The decision-making what? Environments. You have two broad methods or decision-making environments. You have conditions of uncertainty. Conditions of uncertainty. Number 2, you have conditions of risk. Conditions of what? Risk. Conditions of uncertainty and conditions of risk. Under conditions of uncertainty, environment, under conditions of uncertainty environment, you have various decision-making criteria. The first being maximax. You can have maximin. You can have Ruiz. You can have Laplace. You can also have what? Mini-max. Mini-max. Under conditions of risk. Conditions of risk. You will have expected monetary value. Expected monetary value. and you will have expected opportunity loss. Expected opportunity loss. Expected opportunity loss. All right. So today I want us to talk about conditions of uncertainty. Conditions of what? Uncertainty. Conditions of uncertainty. So let me highlight this here. A, decision making uncertainty. Of uncertainty. Decision making under environment of uncertainty, or under conditions of what? Uncertainty. Under conditions of uncertainty. And we are going to do this by doing a what? A question together. So we will start by showing you how you prepare your what? Your payoff table. Let me start by illustrating how you prepare a payoff what? Table. Just did done the theory there. So we can do a question together. We can do a question together. We want to do a question together. Let's proceed to a question on December of 2024. December of 2024. An illustration. 2024. And the question I want us to talk about or to look at is question 4B. And the question states, Lambda Limited is a real estate firm. Recently, the company acquired a piece of land in a metropolitan area with prospective investment opportunities to develop. The investment center manager is to make a decision on which of the 3 mutually exclusive projects to invest in the next year. Each project is considered to be an investment center. The 3 investment centers are corporate offices, shopping malls, and residential what? Estate. The projected annual payoffs per project under the 3 economic states of nature are as follows. You have your decision alternatives, which is you have your states and the economic states, so, and your probabilities. Then required the investment center to invest in so as to satisfy the max criterion and minimize the expected opportunity loss. But your payoff tables, they've said you have economic state, optimistic, most likely, pessimistic. Probability of optimistic is 0.3, most likely is 0.4, pessimistic is 0.3. Corporate offices, you expect 100 million. Corporate most likely is 70 million. Corporate pessimistic is 130 million. Shopping mall optimistic, you expect 110 million. 90 million for most likely under shopping mall. Shopping mall, when they are pessimistic, they expect 90 million. Residential, when they are optimistic, is 90 million. When they are residential is most likely, they expect 120. Then the residential, when they are pessimistic, they expect a payoff of 70 million. A payoff of 70 million. So for us to be able to make a decision, we will need to prepare a payoff table. So let's prepare our payoff table. A payoff table. So that you can be able to make a what? A decision. Your states of nature here. Your states of nature, we've said they are uncontrollable. So there we've said you must have your state of nature. And here you will have your decision alternative. Decision alternative. That must be that way. required so as to know what is the state of nature and what is your decision. If you go to required, they are asking the investment center to invest in. The investment center to invest in. And your investment centers that you want to invest in, you'll either invest in who? Corporate. You want to make a decision on whether to invest in corporate, whether you will invest in what? Shopping mall. If not shopping mall, you will either invest in residential estate. Residential who? Estate. Residential estate. Then the states of nature which are uncontrollable to you will be the economic state. The economic state. So the economic state here cannot be controlled by the decision maker. The economic state cannot be controlled by the decision what? Maker. So the economic state will either be optimistic, if it is not optimistic, it is most likely, and lastly, the last economic state is what? Pessimistic. Pessimistic. So remember, class, that when we say state of nature, it is always uncontrollable. When we say decision alternative, the decision you make can be controlled by the decision maker. That is how you highlight, or that is how you distinguish between a decision alternative and your state of nature. And your state of what? Nature. Once you have identified your alternative and your state of nature, you then have your what? Payoffs. Your payoffs. And for corporate, under optimistic, you expect 100 million. That is 70 million. 130 million. Shopping mall, you expect 110 million. 90 million. 90 million. Residential, you expect 19 million on your optimistic. Most likely is 120 million. Then pessimistic is 70 million. Is 70 million. Right. Now that you have represented your information in your payoff table, let's now talk about the conditions of uncertainty, or the decision making conditions of uncertainty, the various methods we can use to make what? Decisions. The various ways you can use to make what? Decisions. The first method, we referred to it as maxi. So the first method here, right here, A, the first method that a decision maker can use under conditions of uncertainty is what? Maxi-max. It is maxi-max. Maxi-max here simply says you pick the maximum of your maximum payoffs. So this means you pick your maximum of maximum who? Payoffs. Of your maximum what? Payoffs. So what will you do here? Since you have the payoffs and you want the maximum, so you come here and select the what? The maximum. The maximum there. You want the what? The maximum. And the maximum here Under corporate is how much? Under corporate is how much? 130. Under corporate is 130. That is how much you expect. Shopping mall, the maximum payoff is how much? 110. Then a residential, the maximum payoff is 120. 120. Therefore, the maximum of your maximum payoffs, the maximum of your maximum payoffs must be here. That is your maximum of your maximum what? Payoffs. So you're going to say, you then advise, So therefore, you're going to tell them to invest in what? To invest in who? Corporate. Why are you saying corporate? You're saying corporate because it is the one that will result in maximizing of the maximum what? Payoffs. The second decision-making criteria under conditions of uncertainty, is what we refer to as maxi-min. And the maxi-min criterion simply states that you maximize your minimum what? Payoffs. Maximum of minimum who? Payoffs. Maxi-min. Maxi-min. Maximum of your minimum what? Payoffs. So what must we do? We must determine our what? Minimum payoffs. So here again, our minimum who? Payoffs. Minimum. Writing there minimum. And your minimum payoffs that you expect for corporate is how much? 70. Your minimum payoff for shopping mall is how much? 90. And your residential, your minimum payoff is how much? 70,000. 70,000. And therefore, you want your maximum of your minimum. Since we have our minimum payoffs, the maximum is right here. That is your maximum of your minimum what? Payoffs. So what will you advise them? You're going to advise them to invest in what? Shopping who? Mall. Why? Because it is the one that corresponds with the maximum of minimum what? Payoffs. The third method that a decision maker could use is what we refer to as Laplace decision making criteria. Laplace decision making criteria. The Laplace decision making criteria simply states that every payoff has an equal chance. Laplace simply states that every payoff has an equal what? Chance. So this one here, we normally say it is equal likely. Equally likely. So what you simply do is you simply get your total payoffs. Your total payoffs. Then you divide by your observations or your states of nature. For example, for corporate, your payoffs will be optimistic of 100,000 plus most likely of 70 plus pessimistic of who? 130. Then you divide by their 3 observations, so that you must divide by who? By 3. Shopping mall, you will have what? 110 plus 90 plus 90. You divide by who? 3. There were 3 of them, optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic. Then lastly, residential, residential estate, your most optimistic is a payoff of 90,000 plus most likely of 120 plus 70,000. Then you divide all that by who? By 3. By 3. Let's now get the totals of each. 100 plus 70 plus 130. That is a average payoff of 100,000. 110 plus 90 plus 90 divide by 3 is a payoff of 96,666.67. 90 plus 120 plus 70 divide by 3 is a payoff of 333.33. So again, using replace, you select the one with the highest payoff or equal chance, which in this case is who? Corporate. So that will be a decision. So you're going to tell them using replace to invest in who? To invest in who? Corporate facility. To invest in corporate. So your advice, invest in who? Corporate. Why corporate? Because it is the one with the highest what? Payoff. Using what? Replace. Right. The fourth decision-making criteria under conditions of uncertainty is Hurwitz. Hurwitz. Now, Hurwitz here simply states that to get a decision, you're going to take the maximum payoff, you multiply by a coefficient alpha plus minimum payoff, then times 1 minus your coefficient alpha. So using this question, though it was not a requirement for knowledge purposes and for the exam purposes, let's assume that alpha is 0.3, that they will always provide in an exam situation. Therefore, 1 minus alpha is 0.7. 0.7. So using Hurwitz criterion, let's assume your alpha is 0.3, then 1 minus alpha is 0.7. Let us determine which facility we are to invest in. We can start with who? Corporate. Corporate, your maximum payoffs for corporate, I can see your maximum payoff was 130. You multiply with a probability of 0.3 plus your minimum payoff of corporate was 70 with a probability of 0.7. The shopping mall facility had a maximum payoff of who? 110. 0.3 as your coefficient plus your minimum payoff for shopping is 90 with a probability of 0.7. Lastly, residential estates, which will be your maximum payoff is 120 by 0.3 plus 70 by 0.7. Let's now get our what? Payoffs. 130 by 0.3 plus 70 by 0.7. That is 88,000 or 88 million. 110 by 0.3 plus 90 by 0.7. This is 96 million by 0.3 plus 70 by 0.7. So this is how much? 85,000. 85,000. So the one with the highest payoff will be what? The shopping mall. So you're going to advise them to invest in the what? Shopping mall. So your advice, invest in your who? Shopping mall. Invest in who? Shopping mall. Invest in shopping mall. The fourth decision-making criteria under conditions of uncertainty, environment, is minimax. Is minimax criterion. And your minimax criterion here, we normally say it is also known as a regret criterion. As a regret what? Criterion. Here, we normally regret or we measure the amount of regret as a result of choosing one alternative over the next alternative. As a result of choosing one alternative over the best alternative. So using minimax criterion, we must prepare what we refer to as a regret table. So we come here and prepare a regret or opportunity loss table. Or opportunity loss what? Table. We must prepare an opportunity loss what? Table. So you're going to have your states of nature. States of nature. Which was your economic who? Condition. This is not going to change. Then here is your decision who? Alternative. And your decision alternative is basically what you want to invest in. You heard optimistic condition, most likely, and lastly, pessimistic. Your decision is corporate, then who? Shopping mall, and lastly who? Residential. Okay, all right. But once you have drawn your opportunity loss table, which is this, exactly as it should be. What then you must decide then is the maximum regret. Is the maximum what? Regret. Or the regret you will have. And how do you do that? You do that by selecting your maximum. By selecting your what? Maximum. Okay? Your maximum payoff for every state of nature. You select your maximum payoff from every state of nature. For example, using optimistic, I can see your maximum is that. That is your maximum. The most likely, the maximum is that. Pessimistic, the maximum is. So using optimistic, the best you should have said is invest in shopping mall. The most likely you should have invested in residential, and under pessimistic conditions you should have invested in who? In corporate. Okay, so then what we do next is we determine our amount of what? Regret. Our amount of what? Regret, or your opportunity loss. This is how we do that. The best condition under optimistic should have been what? Your shopping mall. But instead of selecting your shopping mall, you selected your who? Optimistic. So how much regret did you have? You're going to take 110 minus who? 100. So therefore, you lost how much? 10,000. That is what you lost. 10,000. There. Are we together? Then here, that was that. Let me come back again to that. Let me explain that again so that we are together. Because sometimes students confuse that what? Particular what? Concept. Students tend to confuse that particular what? Concept. We want to identify the amount of regret that we suffered in an organization. Okay? And how do we do that? We are going to do that first by identifying the maximums. And your maximum is here. Under optimistic, your maximum is shopping mall. Under most likely, your maximum is residential. Under pessimistic, you selected what? Corporate of 130. That is what you should have selected. Okay. Now, corporate condition now. Suppose instead of investing in what? 110, you invested in corporate of what? 100. What amount did you lose? It will be 110 minus who? 100, which is how much? 10. 10. Here, shopping mall, you invested in what? In the shopping mall instead itself. Therefore, there is nothing you lost. So 110 minus 110 is what? 0. There is nothing you lost there. Here, you invested in the residential and got a payoff of 90. But the best should have been investing in who? Shopping mall of 110. So 110 minus 90 is that 20,000. That is 20 what? 1,000. The other one here is most likely you invested in what? Corporate of 70 instead of residential of 120. So how much did you forego? 120 minus 70, that is 50. That is what you forego. The 90 minus 120 or 120 minus 90. How much did you lose? 30. That is how much opportunity you lost. Then you invested in residential and got a payoff of 120 and the best was 120. Therefore, you lost nothing there. There you lost 0. You lost 0. Pessimistic corporate, you invested 130 and got a payoff of 130. That was the best, so you lost nothing. Here under shopping mall, you invested and got how much? 90. But the best should have been how much? 130. So 130 minus 90 is how much? 40. Then 130 minus 70 is how much? 60. 60 million. Okay. So what we have done here is identify our what? Payoffs. Is identify our who? Payoffs. We have identified our who? Payoffs that give us the regret or the what? Regret that we have as a result of choosing one decision that was not the best. But when we were making that decision, we thought it to be the best. Then later came to learn that it was not the best or the most optimal, and that is why we are regretting our decision. Let's select our maximum. Let us select our maximum. Our maximum regret. Our maximum regret. And the maximum regret here is how much? 50,000. 50,000. The maximum regret there is how much? 40,000. The maximum regret there is how much? 60. thousand. It is 60 what? Thousand. Then to invest, you look at the one with the one that corresponds to the minimum, because remember you want your mini max. So the one with the minimum is what? That. So therefore, using the minimax criterion, you're going to tell them invest in what? Shopping mall. You tell them to invest in who? Shopping mall. Okay. You're going to tell them to invest in what? Shopping mall. Up to that point, is there a question? To that point, I hope that is very, very clear. All right. Those are decision making under conditions of what? Uncertainty. Decision making under conditions of who? Uncertainty. We've started with what? Maximax. We've said it is the maximum of the maximum payoffs. Maximin, maximum of minimum payoffs. Replace is equal likely payoffs. Then Ruiz is the product of your maximum payoffs and your coefficient, your minimum payoffs and times 1 minus coefficient. Then lastly, it is your minimax, which is your regret or your opportunity loss what? As a result of choosing one decision over the next best or decision. So you end up doing what? Regretting. So those are the conditions of uncertainty. Now that you are done with the conditions of uncertainty, so I want to introduce a new concept, which is decision making under conditions of what? Certainty or risk, not certainty. Decision making under conditions of what? Risk. So here now we will do conditions of what? Risk. And the first condition of risk, is what we refer to as expected monetary value. The first condition of risk is what we refer to as expected monetary value, EMV. We simply denote it as EMV. And your EMV, your expected monetary value, is simply your what? The summation of probability of payoff times what? Probability. It is the normal expected value we did what? We obtained. For example, in December 2024 question 4b, they'd said that the probability of optimistic is 0.3, the probability of most likely is 0.4, the probability of pessimistic is 0.3. So to determine your what? Your expected monetary value, you're going to take your probability, you multiply by your payoff plus your probability by your payoff plus your probability by your what? Payoff. So we can start with what? Corporate 0.3 by who? 100,000 plus 0.4 by 70,000 plus 0.3 by 130,000. That is corporate. Then shopping 0.3 by 110,000 plus 0.4 by 90,000 plus 0.3 by 90,000. Lastly is residential 0.3 by 90 plus 0.4 by 120,000 plus 0.3 by 70,000 by 70,000 by 70,000. Then now we determine our what? Expected monetary values by simply multiplying your probabilities by what? Your probabilities by who? Your payoffs, that should give you 70,000 times 90, that is 96,000. 0.3 times 90 plus 0.4 by 120 plus 0.3 by 70, that is also what? 96,000. That is 96,000 times 90 plus 0.3 by 90, 96.3 by 90. I'm just confirming these answers, times 120 plus 0.3 by 70, 96. So the expected monetary here will be 70,000, that will be 96,000, and that should be 96,000. Then you select the one that corresponds with the what? The highest, and I can see the maximum EMV is those two. The maximum EMV is those two. So you're going to tell them to either invest in what? In either shopping mall or who? Residential. Or residential who? Estates. All right. The next condition of risk, that was expected monetary value. And write this here. The first one is this is your expected monetary value, so that you see it very clearly. Expected monetary what? Value. The next decision making criteria under conditions of risk is what we refer to as your expected opportunity loss. Your expected opportunity loss. Your expected opportunity loss, which we say is OAL, will be given by the summation of your payoff times your opportunity loss. So for you to do this, or for you to get your opportunity loss, you must determine your what? You must prepare what? Your expected opportunity loss table or your regret table, and this should be your payoff or probability opportunity times your probability. Sorry, that is that. We have said one thing and written the other, so it is the summation of your opportunity. Let me write this nicely. Your opportunity loss. So that way, your opportunity loss by your what? Probability. By your probability. Let's write this nicely. By your probability. Yes, that way. So for you to be able to get an expected opportunity loss, you must determine your opportunity loss what? Table. That you must prepare. And how do you prepare it? We've said you prepare it first by drafting your states your payoff table. So you have your opportunity or regret or opportunity loss what? Table. Loss table, which you already have. have your states of nature. We are still doing the question of what? December 2024. This is your economic condition or the states of nature. You're doing the question of December 2024. This is your decision alternative. 0.4, 0.3. Corporate. Shopping mall. And lastly, who? Residential. We want our regret. We want our regret. And your regret, we said you must start by selecting your maximums. So 110 minus 10 is 10,000. 110 minus 100 is minus 110 is 0. 110 minus 90 is 20. It's not going to change. 120 minus 70 means you are regretting how much? 60. Then 120 minus 90 is 30. That is what? 0. Then the next item there is 130 minus 30 minus 130 is 0. 130 minus 90 is 40. Then 130 minus 70, 1,000, 60,000. Then, now that we have determined our regret, what then do we need to do? We then introduce our expected opportunity loss. And how do you determine your expected opportunity loss? We've said that your expected opportunity loss is simply your opportunity loss you multiply by your who? Probability. Yeah? Let's start with corporate. Working investment proposal. Optimistic is 0.3 by 10,000 plus 0.4 by what? 50,000 plus 0 by 0.3. Shopping mall, your probability of 0.3 times 0 plus 0.4 by 30,000 plus 0.3 by 40,000. Then residential, 0.3 by 20,000 plus 0.4 times 0 plus 0.3 times a regret of 60,000 times a regret of 60,000. Let's see this. 0.3 times 10 plus 0.4 times 50 plus 0.3 times 0. This is 23. 0.3 times 0 plus 0.4 times 30 plus 0.3 times 40. 24. 0.3 times 20 plus 0.4 times 0 plus 0.3 times 60. Then what do you select? You select the decision that corresponds with the minimum. The decision that corresponds with the minimum expected opportunity loss, which is this one. The one with the minimum. So what will you tell them to invest in? You're going to invest in what? Invest in who? Corporate. Invest in what? Corporate. And that is how you deal with what? expected monetary value approach, and expected opportunity loss approach. The expected monetary value approach and the expected opportunity loss approach. All right, and those are the two conditions of risk that we have covered today. In the next lesson, we are going to talk about value of perfect information. We are going to talk about value of perfect information. So from me and on behalf of Manifested Publishers, goodbye and God bless you.